Hello everyone, this is Tonelli. Welcome to a new one chord a week video. Today's chord I think sounds great, although it's a bit strange and peculiar. So let's dive right in. The minor major seventh chord is indeed a bit of a strange chord and kind of peculiar, and is a non-diatonic chord, which means that it's not found in the harmonization of the major scale or its modes, and therefore its use is quite sparse or very specific. But indeed you will find it in many styles of music. You will find it in later classical music, you'll find it in film scores, you'll of course find it in jazz. It's actually very often associated with jazz music, but also it's possible to find it in pop and rock. So definitely a cool chord with some cool functions and some cool purposes for using it. So before we begin, as always, let's start with the formula and figure out how we build it and how we make it click. The formula of the minor major seventh is quite simple, is of course based on a minor triad. In case you missed the video on minor triads, here's a link for you, you can check it out. And on top of that chord, you'll just add a major seventh. And the major seventh, we've seen it before in, for example, the major seventh chord. Again, here's a link if you want to check it out. And this chord is kind of a mix of the two, all right? So let's see how it's built. We start from the root C. As always in these videos, we're talking in C. Then we have the minor third, which is E flat. And then the fifth, which is G. So up until now, we just have a basic minor chord. But now on top of this, we're going to add the major seventh. And it's a B. And it has this strange sound. Now the major seventh, in case you don't remember, is found right before the octave. So if we're in C, the major seventh is found one half step or one fret on your guitar before the C. The B and the C. And you'll hear this tension that is then released on the root, and that's part, of course, of the sound of this chord, which we're going to talk about right now. And this is the sound of the minor major seventh chord. I think it's beautiful, but it is a bit strange. And the reason it's a bit strange is that it comes from harmonizing the harmonic minor scale. The harmonic minor scale is a regular minor scale with a 7th degree, in this case the B, raised from B flat of the minor scale to natural B of the major scale. So the main problem with the minor scale is that it doesn't really pull towards the root, it doesn't really resolve. So let's hear it. This is just a regular minor scale. You can hear there's no real pressure here when I get to the 7th to go up to the root. I can, but you'll be as happy if I were going somewhere else. That's a bit of a problem when you create progressions with the minor scale. The major scale doesn't have that issue. You see, it has this natural B or major seventh that wants to pull towards the root. Okay, so somebody somewhere hundreds of years ago said, well, why don't we just borrow that note and use it in our minor scale? And that's basically what the harmonic minor scale is. You have a minor scale with the 7th from the major scale, all right? So it has this strange interval, and that's what makes the sound of the scale. Now, if you harmonize this scale, the harmonic minor, you do find the minor major 7th chord, and that's where it comes from. And so it's a very peculiar sound and is not often used, but there are many ways to use it. I'm going to give you a couple, all right? One of them is to just jam on it. So if you have a minor 7th chord, maybe imagine it with a bit of a percussion underneath, maybe a moving bass, and on top of it you'll be jamming. With, for example, the harmonic minor. It will give you a definite exotic color. It's used sometimes in flamenco as a kind of improvisation device, so somebody will just jam on this chord and then the soloist will play over it or sing over it using the harmonic minor scale. So that's an interesting way you can use it. The other interesting way to use it is to use it as kind of a chromatic device, all right? So, for example, if you're in the key of C minor, right, you could have a C minor chord, sorry, and then diatonic to C minor, you would have, for example, C minor 7th. So between these two chords, you can use the major 7th as a passing note. Minor, minor major 7th, minor 7th, and you can even keep going to a minor 6th. Yeah, minor 6th, which we actually looked at, so there's a link. And then, you see, you can keep moving this voice, and it sounds like this. Listen for this phrase. Okay? Or something like that, but you see what I could achieve that over chords. Now, of course, when you do that, you'd have to be kind of careful of managing it with your improvisation. You would have to switch from one scale to the next depending on what chord is underneath. Or you could just use a simple note that fits over all these chords. The easiest one would be the root, or maybe the 5th, or the minor 3rd. You can use a note that floats over all these chords. You see any? I'm always using the C, I'm always using the G, I'm always using the B, the E flat, and there's other notes that I'm not even using at all, so I could use those to just play over this basic progression. As usual, I'm going to give you 3 fingerings for this chord. This will get you started, but then of course, if you enjoy a chord, you should look at many more voicings and fingerings so that you can have better control of it, and each one of these chords sound a bit different from the other, and so sometimes one will fit, or sometimes just because of the key you're in, you want to play in this area of the neck, then something down here won't work. So the more options you have, the better. So the first position is very simple. We play the root on the 3rd fret of the 5th string. Then we have the E flat, which is the minor 3rd, on the 1st fret of the 4th string. And then we just play open strings on the 3rd and 2nd strings. And that gives us the 5th and the 7th. You could want to double this G down here, but it makes it a bit harder later to move it across the fretboard. So maybe just play this, and that way you have a movable position. It's easier to play, all right? So 3, 1, open, open. For the second one, we're going to move to this area here, very common in C of all kinds, right? And here's what we're going to do. We're going to play the root on the 3rd fret of the 5th string again, but this time we develop it on this side of the root. So we have this C here, then we have the G on the 5th fret of the 4th string, and here 4th fret for these next 2 strings will give us the 7th and the 3rd. And then here it doesn't really cost anything, so you might as well use the bar and have that extra G up here for a bit more brightness. You don't have to use it, this is fine, or you can. It doesn't matter, it doesn't make it any harder to play. And for the last fingering, let's move to another very common position for C, which is the 8th fret of the 6th string. So on this fret we have the C, our root. Then we will play the major 7th, which is B, on the 9th fret of the 4th string. And then on the 8th fret again of the 2nd and 3rd string, we find the missing notes E flat and G. As always with these shapes, you will need to either mute it with this finger, the 5th string that is, that we're not playing, or if you're just playing with your fingers, then you just skip it. All right, just make sure that it doesn't ring out, because it sounds pretty bad. And also make sure you don't press it accidentally, because then it will sound also as bad. Not terrible, but it's not the chord we're after. So make sure you don't play the 5th string. Doesn't matter what technique you use, skip that. Very well, so now you got your positions and you probably want to jam over this chord. So let's look at two scales that you can use. Now, there are quite a few scales actually. If you study exotic scales, if you study strange modes, there are quite a few options. But I'm going to give you the two very basic ones and the ones that are kind of the mother scale to this chord. These are scales that when you harmonize them, you do find the minor major seventh chord. Okay, so the first one is of course the one we just talked about, which is the harmonic minor scale. Again, it's a minor scale which fits of course the minor part of the chord with a major seventh, which of course fits the major seventh part of the chord. So when you have a minor major seventh chord, you can jam over it. With the harmonic minor. All right, and the next one is a very close relative to the harmonic minor. It's basically the same thing, but it also raises the sixth note, and it's called the melodic minor. So basically it's C, D, E flat, F, G, but the A flat goes up to A, and the B flat goes up to B. So it kind of becomes a major scale with a minor third. This is beyond the scope of these videos, which are after all on chords and not on scales. But if you just want to jam on it, just look for any diagram of a melodic minor, and there you have it. You'll be able to just jam on it. If you want to know more about it, we do talk about scales quite a bit in our weekly live streams. I do it on Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. pretty much every week, with no exception. And we've talked about the melodic minor, and we certainly will do more. So I give you a link to the playlist. If you want, you can go check it out, and or ask questions in the comments. But basically, this is the sound of the melodic minor. And so again, over a chord like this, you can just play . You get this kind of sound. All right, so pretty interesting stuff, melodic minor. Very well, you made it through this video. I think it does sound a bit complicated, but it really isn't. And after all, everything in music, or at least in Western music, and a lot of world music too, is based on these very simple 12 notes, or better said, 12 intervals between notes. As soon as you get control over these intervals, everything else kind of makes sense. You want a major seventh? Well, just use a major seventh. You want a perfect fifth? Use the perfect fifth. Are you going to augment the fifth? Just pull it up one half step. And it's important to really have a good grasp on intervals, how they work, and even the names. So knowing that, I don't know, the minor sixth of F has to be a D flat, and the major third of whatever you wanted to call it, G sharp, has to be B sharp. It can't be called C. This is something that you should certainly check out with your teacher maybe, or if you're by yourself, really, try to dive deep into the intervals, because really everything that we talk about all the time, it doesn't matter if it's chords, scales, whatever it is, it's all based on distances, on intervals, and not necessarily on what note you're playing, all right? So that's a little tip that you can certainly believe. It's going to be extremely useful for you and very beneficial to know all the intervals, which means all the distances between notes, rather than just the names of the notes. All right, so I'm going to leave you with this so you can meditate on it and maybe get started your work on the intervals. And certainly check out this beautiful chord, the minor major seventh. If you haven't done so, please do consider subscribing if you like this video, of course. If not, you don't have to do it. And liking and commenting and hitting the bell and all the good stuff that really helps out the channel. And I will see you very soon with a new video. I'll think of something really cool for next week. And in the meantime, have a great week. Play guitar, practice a lot, and especially have fun when you play the guitar. See you soon. Bye-bye.